Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. We're back, everybody, live with Yaqeen Institute. I'm your host, Imam Tom Facchine, and it's a pleasure to have you with us. We took a week off last week because, I need breaks too. But we missed you all, and we're happy to have you with us tonight. We have a very exciting show prepared for you. As always, we've got some very important current events that are going on. The political sort of race in the United States is heating up and taking shape. Somebody takes a swipe at myself and Sheikh Omar Suleiman. We'll talk about that. We'll also continue going with our books. So we've got Tafsir today of Surah An-Nas, and of course we've got Atomic Habits. But first, let's go to the chat and see who we have tuning in with us tonight. First one in, Ruslan. Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah, asks, how do I stop being angry at people? There's a lot to say. So there's like some attitudinal shifts, right? It's like, how are you making sense of what you're doing in this world? And then there's sort of like techniques, and there's techniques that the Prophet ﷺ told us, such as, for example, ones you might already know, making wudu when you are, making your sort of ritual purification, when you're in a state of anger, changing your position if you're standing to sit, and if you're sitting to lay down, and these sorts of things. Those are sort of techniques, but there's a broader worldview that I think is really important to bring up. Why are we angry, right? Maybe, and we're assuming here that what you mean is like excessively angry. Are we displeased with Allah's qadr? Are we having false expectations as to how other people will be? And I think there's something that's going to come up tonight about having realistic expectations. Not everybody in the world is your friend. People are going to disappoint you. And so you have to prepare yourself and arm yourself accordingly. What are you angry about, I think, is sort of the question here. But if you realize that everything in life is just a sort of test, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is throwing at you things constantly, like he says in one ayah in Surah Al-Imran, about how you're going to hear, I think we're going to cover this. Actually, we will cover this ayah later, so I'll save it for then. But you're going to hear a lot of people test you, say bad things to you, say harmful things to you, right? And this is all part of what Allah wills, okay? He needs to distinguish from decent to good and from good to better. Not that he doesn't know it already, but in order to demonstrate to you so that you don't have any argument on the day of judgment. So every negative thing, quote unquote negative thing that happens to you is this type of thing. So some people, not saying it's you, Rasnan, but some people, if they're overly angry or their anger is exaggerated, it could indicate perhaps sort of too high of expectations for what this dunya is, right? وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا مَتَاعُ الْغُرُورِ. This worldly life is nothing but a fleeting deception. I like the comment from Discord being after that. You can't learn to stop being angry from Imam Tom. He's a conservative in America. Their whole brand is senseless anger. Man, you got me pegged. I don't know what to do anymore. If you think I'm an angry conservative, you should check out the guy who we're going to show on a clip later. And Hey Qadri, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Driving, glad to have you with us as always. Siti Fatiha, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. One of our wonderful viewers in Malaysia that I was pleased to meet. Happy to have you tuning in. Sheamus with excellent viewpoints and tidbits to add to the conversation as always. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Amanda Walker, also a return viewer. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Welcome. Saliha Ahmed. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah from Atlanta. I believe I recognize you as well. Sahra, I believe. Wa alaikum salam. We have A. Kamil from Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Magical Girls Hans just prayed Fajr. May Allah accept. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. We just prayed Maghrib here in our part of the world. So that shows you how this ummah covers every inch of this earth. Zahir Yunus says, Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dearest brothers and sisters in Islam, and then I know you popped a question in later. You said, did anyone read this disgusting article about the Israeli politician Avigdor Lieberman has called on Israel to carry out a full blockade of Gaza that includes cutting off food, water, medical supplies? Imam Tom, what are your thoughts about this article? It was on Middle East Eye. How can we cope with such barbaric statements like this? This gets to my point to Ruslan about expectations. This doesn't surprise me. I don't know why it surprises anybody at this point. This stuff has been stated not just constantly for the last 10 months. This has been stated for the last 7 decades, right? Now, whether we had access to it or not, whether we knew it was being stated or not, that's a different issue. But when you understand, you go through the Quran, you see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala divides different people into different sort of categories. And we shouldn't be surprised by this sort of thing, right? We should expect that from people who swear to be our sort of mortal enemies for no good reason, except that we say that our Lord is Allah. And so the question is not what's our attitude towards them, but what are we doing? That's what they're doing. Like their methodology and mandate is clear. They know exactly what they're up to. What are we doing? Like, what are we doing to prepare, to build power, to help our brothers and sisters, both in our own backyards and across the world, and to contribute to the societies that we exist in and to make them better and more just places? Good. Dan Wolf. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Who else? Nope. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi. And Nope brings up a comment here later. I saw. Let me scroll to it. I wanted to again ask you to bring the lack of captions for the deaf or hard of hearing on your videos up to your team. Jazakallah khair. Okay, Nope. I know nothing about technology. Zero. So this is my bringing it up to the team because I know that other team's watching. Guys, can we figure out captions? Can we figure out this sort of thing? We've got way smarter people than me that are capable of doing that. Or if it's a YouTube thing, I don't know if YouTube does that for you or whether that's something on our end. Either way, guys in the studio are going to follow up on that. Thank you very much. What else do we have? Safina Kosar. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ameen. Beautiful dua. Thank you. Ya Allah, make our ummah strong in your deen and give us strength to follow your deen properly. Wonderful. Sara. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. What else we got? Dion from Canada. Wa alaikum salam. Oh, from Canada. There we go. It's Rick Rashid. Wa alaikum salam. Welcome back to the program. Random Thoughts. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Yes. A Qadri says, was so upset seeing that poor hijabi getting hit over the head with a "We Love Joe" banner. Wallahi, wallahi, wallahi. If there wasn't a better visual symbol of American politics right now than a hijabi getting hit over the head with a "We Love Joe" sign. Many of you have seen this on social media. CARE said that they're going to try to press charges. This is not just any hijabi. This is Nadia Ahmed. We had her on this program back in, I believe, the spring, if not the winter, as a guest. So she is somebody who's very accomplished, someone who is a delegate for the Democratic Party, and she has demonstrated great courage and at great risk to her own sort of, in this case, health and also safety, and also to her position and to her professional life. She has been constantly outspoken when it comes to Palestine, and she deserves a ton of credit for that. So she was the person on the receiving end of that act of aggression and that assault, and we ask Allah to deal with it fairly. 7M, 8M, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Sheamus, I'm not sure which comment you're talking about getting removed. Amina Kasupovic, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah from Bosnia. Inshallah, I hope to visit Bosnia this year, hopefully in May. Inshallah, that will be a first for me, hopefully. Amir Nuruddin, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah from Minnesota in the house. I lived in Minnesota for a time. Some people know, some people don't. Sidi Nuriati Studio, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh from LA. I'll be in LA in the end of November, last week in November, inshallah. Nusayba Qasim from Worcester, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. You have a new imam who is a good friend of mine. So exciting times for Worcester. I'm going to have to, I think, pay you guys a visit. Adi, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah from Iceland. Allahu Akbar. We've got Iceland in the house. Sada says, critiques of halak. I think I've heard interim leader of Bangladesh's secular Nobel laureate and the like. So is Bangladesh not going the right way? Well, that's Sada always brings up you're the MVP, Sada, for questions on this program. And we've talked a lot 2 weeks ago when we last had our program about Bangladeshi politics. And obviously I'm not an expert. However, I do know people in the diaspora and people in Bangladesh itself that are sort of educating me and trying to give me the lowdown. I think it depends on your perspective at this point. One perspective is incrementalism, okay? And that perspective is basically saying that if you go too fast, right? If you go too fast, then you provide an easy pretext for somebody to destabilize you, intervene, military coup, etc. They point to Egypt as an example. That's one school of thought. The second school of thought is what you're sort of saying. It's like, hey, wait a second, this ruler is secular, and they aren't really so much of a break from the past, perhaps. So this is not satisfactory. Allah knows best what's going to happen. This is a very, very sensitive time. There's another video that Imam Omar Suleiman put out about addressing the situation in Bangladesh and address to the people of Bangladesh, saying that don't let your revolution be hijacked. And certainly, normally how these things happen is that there's this sort of gray period where different factions are sort of tussling for power and trying to outmaneuver one another. And this is a very, very critical moment in Bangladeshi history. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect everybody there and to make the Muslims, and we talked about this issue 2 weeks ago, to make the Muslims a means of everybody there being protected, right? Because this is one of the Hindutva sort of, let's say, tropes that the Muslims, having Muslims in power, having Islamic governance is somehow going to endanger the non-Muslims. And yet we've seen time and time again, Muslims sticking their neck out to try to defend Hindu temples, to defend religious minorities. Maya Rihab, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Ahlan wa sahlan. Nis Amira, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. From Malaysia, salamat datang. Rahma Baluch from Durham, North Carolina. Trying to find a way to get to Durham, inshallah. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Juju S from Orange County, California. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Muhammad Mihjazi, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, from Houston. Excellent. Inshallah ta'ala will be in Houston. Oh boy, I don't know. When am I going to be in Houston? We definitely have something in Houston. And if someone can figure out my calendar for me, then I think it might be the first weekend of September, if I'm not mistaken. Houston's a lovely city. I really enjoyed my last time there. Ashik. I remember, let's see, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. It's Ashik from Bangladesh. What's cooking? Nothing's in the kitchen right now except a mocha pot. Tori J, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Sheamus. Yeah, that's true. Sheamus brings up a good point. Most leaders now are secular. I think the question is like purely secular or like secular front, trying to incrementally push things like in the same way, maybe like an Erdogan or something like that, Imran Khan, or whether they're secular through and through. You know what I mean? Pestify from Maldives. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Good to have you back with us. You're a regular. We appreciate you. Is there any way to know which week's podcasts would be scheduled or not? Yes, once the Yaqeen schedulers talk to my scheduler and they get on the same page. Next week we'll be off. I'll be traveling again, and then I'm going to be with my nose to the grind, and I'm not going to be traveling for a while. So we're going to be off next week, but then starting the beginning of September, we're going to be going hardcore. Okay, let's see. Enes Ashmila. Alaykum salam wa rahmatullah. What is the meaning of being a man? Allahu Akbar. Coming with the hard questions. Has that to do with protecting others? 100%. Men are the ones that stand in between the world and chaos. 100%. And that is a burden that weighs on your back and mine. And we have to take that extremely seriously. That we are the protectors of the weak. We are the protectors of the poor. We are the protectors of our women folk. We're the protectors of the children, of the elderly. That is what being a man means. And we have an increased responsibility in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as protectors. I do not read, I believe that's Amharic, but I would love to learn. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah from Ethiopia. Glad to have you with us. What can teenagers do to support Gaza other than protesting? It's a big topic, but I think in general, we need to be more creative in our thinking about tactics and what we're doing. I'm doing a lot of workshops and talks, on my travels about this particular issue, that we can't just do the thing that's closest in reach, such as protests and rallies and demonstrations. There might be situations in which they're called for, but there's a lot more that we can be doing, looking for opportunities. And those are sort of site-specific questions, right? Some things are going to have to do with education. I think all teenagers can participate in education when it comes to educating their teachers and their principals and their, the superintendents, and sort of, especially because they're all in schools, working at the school level to sort of get visibility, right? A lot of people don't realize how many Muslims, how many Palestinians, how many Arabs there are in these schools. And then to look for local opportunities. And opportunities might be a positive thing that you can do, or the removal of a harmful thing or a harmful person in some cases. Good morning, Kara Ayat from Australia. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. The guys I met in Malaysia that were from Australia were very, very keen on me coming. So inshallah, hopefully I think 2025 it's going to look like. Rawazita Ma, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. How do you protect yourself from being victim of treachery in Muslim community? The believer is not stung through the same hole twice. Okay? That being said, the Muslims were victims of treachery. So you're not going to be able to, if that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has willed for you, you're not going to be able to avoid it. He wants you to learn from it. However, you take as much precaution as you can. Saifullah Muht Sharif, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. May Allah accept. I am just a wretched sinner just like everybody else. I have tons of shortcomings and failures and faults, but we hope that the little bit of good that we do, that Allah gives us tawfiq to do, that He accepts it. Okay. Yep, 100% agree with you, Sada. Juju says, I think CARE Action started a PAC. That's true. Whether it's similar to APAC or not, that remains to be seen. Depends on what your definition and understanding of APAC is as well. It's through Act Blue, so I think Democratic candidates are being helped. Do you think this will be an effective strategy? Yes and no. I mean, like, we definitely have a gaping need for a community grassroots political action committee that is devoting 24/7, 365 attention to electoral politics. We're in the learning phase, right? We're gonna fail a lot. So I'm not going to comment. I know Bassem al-Karra. I know, the people I've talked with him personally who are running this. I wish them success. There's going to be a lot of mistakes in the beginning. The people I know behind it, I assume to be sincere. From what I know, they're sincere. That doesn't make them ma'soom. That doesn't make them sort of infallible. We'll see what happens. But whatever it is, we have to learn quickly. I've mentioned in other spaces, such as my interview with Dr. Salman, but in Islam 21C, my ideas about sort of political strategy in the PAC space. So you can go see more details there. Yusra Adam, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh from London. Jolly old London. It's the first time you're catching me live. I'm so happy to have you with us. London is a lovely city. Totally surprised me. I didn't have negative expectations. I just didn't have any expectations. It was a very livable, walkable city. I enjoyed my time there. Han, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Genuine question. How are we as a citizen supposed to behave towards our own government, especially when our government is not good? You change it, Habibi. The Prophet ﷺ said, if you see an evil, you change it with your hand. And then you look at all the options you have for changing it with your hand, and you pick the one that has the most benefit and the least amount of harm. Thankfully, in the United States of America, we do have political processes that are, if you squint, look democratic, right? So that you actually can sort of have a say. If you organize yourself, if you organize your money, you organize your message, you organize your people, you organize your action, you can affect things. This is something that Muslim community has dropped the ball on in the last 20 years since 9/11. However, we're waking up. And so we have a potential, and this is what I say, Muslims in America have a potential to change the harmful foreign policy of the United States of America. The United States of America has foreign policy going back to at least the 50s that is not just harmful to the Muslims the world over, but is also harmful to the American people. It also puts Americans in jeopardy because it makes the rest of the world basically hate our guts, right? So the most important thing that we can do, I believe, as Muslims is to do what we can to change the foreign policy of the United States of America. And that's an example of something that you can do within your country. Pebbles 222. So I'm struggling with expectations of this world, mostly because I'm starting to feel like I hate this world. You're on the right road, and I don't know how I'm supposed to live hating everything. Well, you have to relate with Allah, not with the dunya. Okay, you're halfway there. And the Prophet ﷺ said that the dunya is mal'una ma fiha, that the world is cursed and cursed everything that's in it, except dhikrullah, except for the remembrance of Allah. Right? And there's some narrations that add like what's tied to it, or teaching, or knowledge, or things like that. But the general idea is that, as said in another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the world is a prisoner for the believers, and the world is Jannah, is paradise for the deniers. And so if you don't feel like a prisoner, you're doing something wrong. Perhaps, and Allah knows best. Don't mean to, cast stones there. Okay, what else do we have? We've got Nazira Begum, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, from India, Bangalore. Happy to have you with us. Thank you so much for tuning in. Sara asked, do you think that those Muslim intellectuals who do discussions and talks and etc. won't have much effect if they don't follow through with actions and projects? Yes, but I'll say this, Sara, to be a little bit more nuanced. We need connectivity between the different types of people. Some people, it's better that they don't do actions, that they don't have the stomach for it, or the courage for it, or the savvy for it, okay? Some people are actually better off in the ivory tower. However, they must have an interface with the people who are on the ground. And Ar-Raghib al-Asfahani says this in his book, Al-Dhari'a ila Makarim al-Sharia, when he talks about the different stations of the ulama. Like there is the qadi, and there's the sheikhs, the alims, and there is the khatib, and you actually need an interface between. They need to swap notes. They need to have opportunities to come together and coordinate action, so that the khatib can take that amazing stuff that the alim is working on, but maybe he's not the most eloquent speaker. Maybe he can't get on TikTok, right? And then they take it and then they popularize it. Right? So we need coordination between those different spheres. We don't necessarily need everybody to do everything. Nazir Begum says, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala free the Palestinians. Ameen. Excellent. Yeah, A. Qadri brings up a good point of that guy with the We Love Joe hitting her from behind like a coward, and then when he was confronted, stopping immediately. Yeah, that was very cowardly behavior. And we know what Islam says about men protecting women. Alhamdulillah, I believe it was a Muslim brother there was the protecting Sister Nadia. But look at the cowardly, unmanly behavior of the perpetrator of that crime. Panji, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi from Indonesia. Salamat datang, welcome. Ameen. Bay Area in the house. Ruqiyya Diriya. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Abdullah says, regarding the live closed captioning, we will look into it, inshallah, as YouTube does not support live captioning at this time. Ah, see, I knew it wasn't our guys. I knew it had to be YouTube. Come on, YouTube. What are you guys doing? Roasita Ma from Bangkok, Thailand. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Happy to have you with us. I had good friends of mine that were neighbors in Medina that were students of knowledge from Thailand. Mariam Maimun, wa alaikum salam, from Phoenix, Arizona. I believe I'll be in Phoenix in October, inshallah. Sheamus. The comment was, on this day. Oh, he's trying to get me in trouble, Sheamus. Assad killed 1,400 civilians with sarin gas. Exactly the same as Ahli massacre in Gaza. Blamed the rebels and committed the same crime hundreds of times throughout the war. Absolutely. Absolutely. And our sense of justice is not partial. Our sense of justice is not partial. Nor do we fall for the Cold War, dichotomy of supporting some dictators because they're the enemy of our enemies. That doesn't fly either, right? And be very suspicious of people, to be frank. Be very suspicious of people who do such a thing. Okay, what about Addis Ababa, Ethiopia? Please come to reach out to us. I would love to. Shoot me an email, imamtomfacchine@gmail.com. Let's make it happen. Ameen. A. Hong, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh from Tokyo, Japan. That's amazing. I think you're our first viewer from Tokyo. Welcome. We're very happy to have you with us. Mustafa, wa alaikum salam. Mrs. S, wa alaikum salam. Mustafa from Djibouti. I knew some folks in Medina from Djibouti as well. Lovely place, lovely people. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Juliati Abdul Jalil. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. It's good to have you with the program. Another lovely person we met in Malaysia. Yes, it's been also almost a month since Umax. Thank you for tuning in. And thank you for your excellent hospitality. Sada says, do you think Muslims are still lacking in having support for new Muslims? Yes, absolutely. Totally, 100%. And if you don't believe me, ask the Don. Ask Abu Sumaya, Wesley LeBron. Shout out to Mass Youth Center and Reverse Reconnect in New York City. One of the people in the trenches for a long time with convert work and convert care. He can tell you all about it. Adi, how can one give dawah to non-practicing and ignorant Muslims? The first thing is with your character, right? And trying to remove obstacles. If they have certain barriers that sort of stand in their way, maybe they had a traumatic experience with a relative or a parent that represented Islam in a poor way, right? That might take time to overcome. Maybe they have an ideological association of Islam as something backwards, right, and stupid. This is very common. Secularism spread this across the world. That's going to take time to overcome. So you need a long-term plan for how to overcome those things. Zahir Yunus asks, in light of the increasing Islamophobia worldwide, how can the global Muslim Ummah remain united while effectively countering these challenges? I mean, that's like a whole thesis, but in short, we can't fetishize unity because we don't want to unite with the wrong people. Right? If we just only preach unity, then we'll also unite with the sellouts and the hypocrites, and that will actually weaken us and be the cause for our defeat. That we have to make sure that we unite with the right people, with the right goals, right? Sheikh Haytham al-Haddad in the UK has been articulating something like this in some of his recent books and talks. They're talking about the people that are for Islam, the people that want to see Islam win, that want the Muslims to win. Those are the people that we need to sort of be drawing in and shoring up sort of differences, finding out how to work along. And then with Islamophobia worldwide, and I people know that I'm not a big fan of the word Islamophobia. It doesn't really do justice to what's going on. I think that the fight against Zionism as a political ideology is probably the most important front in that battle, because Zionism uses quote-unquote Islamophobia as its primary discourse to criminalize being Muslim and to criminalize Islam. And that's just facts, right? So we're doing many, many things at once when we are advocating for Palestine. Hasib Malik, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, from New Jersey, but traveling in Ohio now. Ameen. Ameen, ya Rab. Free Aqsa, 100%. Man, Zahir Yunus coming with the questions. Hot and fast. How should individual Muslims balance their response between active engagement and spiritual alliance? Unite both. Tawheed. Make them the same thing. Sheamus, learn your religion so you don't lose your religion. Being pulled into quid pro quo activism and compromise for Palestine, 100% I agree. Ahang, our friend from Tokyo, how can I help and be a support a Muslim faith friend who has issues with their iman and are distancing themselves from Islam? Well, that's a big question, and there's nuance to it depending on what's the reason, right? Like I just said for the other person that asked about converts, people have a multitude of reasons why they drift from Islam. Some of it is emotional, some of it is social, some of it's intellectual, some of it's ideological. So you have to, and this goes with politics too, everything we're talking about, you have to study the problem. Sometimes we rush into action before we properly study the problem. Study the problem properly first. What is the proper action to do will become clear once you correctly study the problem. Good question, though. Yeah, Sheamus brings up the idea about, politicians, elected politicians versus the deep state. But even that's contested territory, Sheamus. So one of the things that I was going over with some lawyers is how the process of designating different groups as terrorist organizations is something that does not, it's the responsibility of someone who's not an elected official. Okay, like you said, it's sort of deep state. It's someone who it's put on the Department of Homeland Security or the Department of the Secretary of State, I should say. And that person is a cabinet member. They're not somebody who's elected. So even jockeying to get these sorts of things migrating back towards the legislative branch where people are actually sort of accountable, much more accountable than somebody who's just appointed by the president, that would be a win, right? So this is something that is being contested. Minami Islam Khan, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah from Dhaka, Bangladesh. May Allah bless the people of Bangladesh. One of the people who's been a tremendous help to me in understanding the situation in Bangladesh. Thank you so much for all that you do. May Allah make you successful. Ashik, I want to know, is there any Islamic teachings or methodology to fight procrastination and burnouts? Yeah, I think we'll talk about it in Atomic Habits, though it's not Islamic in the sense that it's not a treatise by Ibn Taymiyyah, right? But it jives with Islam. Letitia Muhammad, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, from Trinidad. MashaAllah. Welcome from Trinidad. Amina, XO, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Mustafa. Imam, what is the reason behind our Muslim rulers oppressing us? The ones that oppress us have sold out Islam. And sold out the Muslims. They either they're doing it out of fear for the dunya or love of the dunya. So may Allah guide them, forgive them, or free us from them. Sarah Mulan, wa alaikum salam from Mauritius. Good to have you back. Yaz, wa alaikum salam. Please answer the anger question. I think I did. More specifically, how to deal with seeing injustice all around. Yeah, well, here's where the thing, Raghav Asfahani talks about this in his book that I mentioned previously, Al-Dhari'a ila Makarim al-Sharia. Anger's good, guys. Okay, anger, we're not like liberals where we think that, anger is a bad emotion and we just have to make sure that we make sure we're never angry. No, anger can be a good emotion. Allah created it in you. However, it's not supposed to stay the way it is, nor is it supposed to go to extremes. It is supposed to drive you to justice, right? Allah created the phenomenon, the possibility of anger in you so that you would develop it and achieve justice by it. If you see oppression and you're not angry, especially as a man, something is wrong with you. You are not properly calibrated. You are not properly constituted. So this is something that it needs to be nurtured, developed, focused, and applied. Okay, not undisciplined, right? Neither the extreme of not ever being angry at anything, nor the extreme of being a tyrant, right? And being angry at everything. No, you're angry at injustice. That's good. We shouldn't love justice. We shouldn't love injustice. Injustice should make us angry. But then you have to develop it, focus it, and apply it properly. Well done. Well done. We got Toronto in the house. Miss Hamda Ibrahim. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Laura's back from Al Maghrib. Deem Al Maghrib. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Kadir al abats alaik. Hope you're well. Hope there's lots of Moroccan tea in your present and your future. Sheamus says Israeli lobby is so powerful they get curriculums in Gulf states. Yeah, they're powerful, but they're not as powerful as they want you to think they are. And that's one of the things that we see time and time again. That the Israeli lobby, they pick battles that are easy to win, and then they project power, making you think that they're more powerful than they are. And that's honestly that's a tactic we could learn from. Very good. Here we go. What else we got? Yaqub Ali, wa alaikum salam from Orlando. Very nice. Livingston, New Jersey. Wa alaikum salam. Zameen. Welcome to the program. I hear you, Juju. That's not bad. That's not bad, Juju. 100%. You should feel comfort. So many people in the last 10 months have said, wow, I used to have this doubt, like how could there be so much punishment? And now I get it. Now I get why there's hellfire. Now I get where there's eternal damnation. Because this amount of evil that we've seen the last 10 months demonstrates exactly what it's there for. Okay, Bangladesh being hit by severe floods. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aid the people of Bangladesh and protect them. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The Giga Hut from Malaysia with love. Terima kasih, right back at you. I bet, Laura. Well, drink one for me, inshallah. All right, so we've got a big program, plenty of stuff to get through. We're going to transition to current events. I'll check in with the chat along the way, and especially between segments. First up in the news today, we've got a $20 billion approval, or a $20 billion military aid package that has been approved by the U.S. government and specifically the president, part of which a lot of it is going to Israel. Now, this is significant for several reasons. Firstly, let me go into some of the details. Okay, the president, Joe Biden, signed into law on Wednesday $95 billion of war aid. Okay, so the total is $95 billion. 20 of that's going to Israel. The rest for Ukraine and Taiwan. And also has a provision that would force the social media site TikTok to either be sold or be banned in the United States, which demonstrates that the war is not just, first of all, it demonstrates the globalist intentions of both the neoliberals and the neoconservatives, right? A lot of people, they don't realize that there's a war going on, like an ideological war within the left and within the right, within the Republican Party and within the Democratic Party. You've got neoliberals and neoconservatives. And both of them believe in sort of globalist ambitions, that the United States should be having these military bases everywhere, intervening in all these countries, supporting and spending billions and billions of dollars for warfare in far-flung places while we can't even get jobs over here in the United States. This is a way of doing things. And there's other groups on the right and the left that don't believe in that vision for various reasons. But the interesting thing about highlighting TikTok within this warfare package is the implication and the admission that propaganda is part of this war, right? The 90 billion spent, 95 billion spent, and to tuck in something against TikTok there, that the United States government very much understands propaganda and the information war and censorship of free media as a major part of their war effort, right? That they do not want people on TikTok having unrestricted algorithms, or algorithms that show them the truth as it really is, or coming across people in Gaza that are going to give you the reality on the ground and not Zionist propaganda. They don't want that. And so there's a situation here, and this is one of the differences between 2024 and 2016 or 2008 or other previous sort of iterations of this, of the aggression in Palestine, is that now you've got different media outlets. I think Trump was just on with a podcast with Theo Von. That's the second podcast he's done. This didn't exist 8 years ago, where a presidential candidate would go on a podcast, right, with some upstart person who's not heavily curated, heavily sort of scrubbed of any sort of, like, the legacy media is dying. And we're going to look at a little bit of legacy media in a bit, Fox News in particular. But the generations that trust the legacy media and that watch sort of the old traditional mainstream media is definitely has a shelf life. It definitely is not going to last forever. That the new way is through social media, and the US government realizes that it's such a threat to its globalist ambitions that it wants to control it. So a bunch of things are part of the package to Israel, in particular, 50 F-15 fighter jets, right? All of this to demonstrate the two-facedness and the hypocrisy, and what we say is speaking out of both sides of your mouth, that the democratic regime that is currently in power has given lip service at various points to the suffering of the people of Gaza and the suffering of people of Palestine, as they send billions and billions of dollars of military aid abroad to commit the crimes, right? So this is just appeasement, this is just lip service, and this is a false neutrality. The United States is trying to present it, the government is trying to present itself as this neutral, broker. There's ceasefire. Blinken's in the Middle East again, trying to get a ceasefire. Oh, he came back empty-handed again. Well, gee, I wonder why. You just spent $20 billion arming Israel to the teeth, and you can't get a deal done. No wonder. You're not a good faith actor. You actually have a horse in this fight. You're supporting one side versus the other. And so you're not a diplomat. You're not actually bringing anything good to the region. We have a quote here by Biden that stresses sort of the real face of the American administration or regime. My commitment to Israel, I want to make clear again, is ironclad. Yep. And that is very on brand for him. Now, what's the takeaway for all this as Muslims? We've got several ayats from the Quran that address this directly, but one that struck me in particular, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Anfal, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُمْ لِيَصُدُّوا عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Right? So that I don't like the translation disbelievers, will say the deniers, the people who have denied, they spend their wealth to prevent people from the way of Allah. فَسَيُنْفِقُونَهَا ثُمَّ تَكُونُ عَلَيْهِمْ حَسْرَةٌ ثُمَّ يُغْلَبُونَ وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا إِلَى جَهَنَّمَ يُحْشَرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they will continue to spend and spend and spend. Haven't we seen this? Mushahid, right? This is something they're currently doing. They will continue to spend and spend and spend, and then there's going to come a day where they will regret it. And then after that, they will be defeated. And the deniers of the truth will eventually be driven into hell. La ilaha illallah. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the truth, that people who spend their money in falsehood, spend their money in oppression, it's not going to last forever. You're going to have your time. God tried you. Allah tried you with this opportunity to have wealth. And what did you do with it? We've seen the images. We've seen the videos. Kids blown to bits. Horrifying images and videos every day for the last 10 months. This is what you did with the wealth that God gave to you. You're going to have to answer for it on the day of judgment, and your time of power on earth is going to be short. Transitioning to our second point now. So we've got the Democratic National Convention, which is happening. For those of you who don't know, this is sort of like a political tradition in the United States. It was actually sort of something invented in the 1800s in order to get more buy-in from people, as opposed to just like naming the ticket, here's the president, here's the vice president, to sort of come together and involve more people in the selection of the ticket, who's going to be the president or the vice president that goes on to get to face the election in November. So just by, the qadr of Allah, the Democratic National Convention, so the convention that will appoint, that has announced the formal ticket of Harris and Walz, right, happens to be taking place in Chicago this year. Now, if you don't know anything about Chicago, the second city of the United States, the second largest city, Chicago has one of the, if not the biggest population of Palestinians in the United States of America. There are parts of Chicago called Little Palestine. Okay? And so this was a really interesting opportunity, let's say, for the Palestinian Americans, the Palestinian diaspora, the Muslims, and other allies to announce their rage and displeasure with the Democratic administration and their attitudes and their policies towards Gaza and Palestine. So a lot of stuff has been going down, a ton of protests. Some of the biggest protests that we've seen all year. Protesters are calling for an end to U.S. military aid to Israel. Obviously, they're highlighting the devastating impact on Palestine. And they are expected to be some of the largest protests ever seen for this particular cause. Okay, anybody who's around, if you happen to have some free time, they're centered around Union Square Park or Union Park on the near west side. The main protest activities were planned for today. Additional events are happening throughout the convention. We've seen even some of the people were referencing in the chat the unfurling of a banner saying basically no more, no aid, no military aid to Israel, right? Stop arming Israel. And this was seen as such a threat that the cowardly man behind our sister Nadia Ahmed started hitting her on the head with his "We Love Biden" sign. La ilaha illallah. So it runs from the 19th to the 22nd of August, so it's got 1 day left. And there have been events going all throughout. Now, on the inside of the convention, the Democratic Party is trying to portray this sort of, united front, rah, rah, rally behind our ticket. We're going to get him. We're going to beat Trump. Trump's the bad guy, etc. But the protests have been a thorn in their side, demonstrating that they are not united and that their base and even the broader population is not happy with the policy of the current administration or the Democratic Party towards Palestine and Gaza. And subhanAllah, it was reminding, when we're thinking about these protests, one of the most appropriate ayats of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. So some people could wonder, it's like, well, are these people just vandalists, or are they troublemakers, or are they rabble rousers? I don't know. I was accused of being a conservative at the beginning of this program, but I go to lots of protests. I don't know how, unclassifiable, I guess. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat lin-nas ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkar wa tu'minuna billah." Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, you are the best community ever raised out of humanity, or also for humanity. Both translations are correct. Why? What makes us the best ummah? You encourage the good, or in another translation, command the good. You establish good in your societies, and you forbid or prevent evil from happening. So the Prophet ﷺ said, if you see evil, if any one of you sees evil, then you change it with your hand. And if you can't, meaning you don't have the power to do that, then at least you speak out. And if you can't do that, then at least you hate it in your heart. And he said that is the weakest form of faith. That this, idea of protesting in general, it's not khuruj, it's not sort of revolt, it's not, doing anything that's explicitly illegal or violent or anything that's problematic. That even within our own tradition, that this is one of the ways, one of the tactics of demonstrating at the very least that we hate this thing in our heart. Yes, we are accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for demonstrating that we hate this thing that the United States government is doing to Palestine. We hate it, and we will speak out against it. And if it is possible, we will change it by our hand as well. It's essential that we keep up pressure on our elected officials. They can't be allowed to sleep peacefully, okay? They can't be allowed to continue with business as usual. That the U.S. foreign policy is something that not just commits objective moral harm across the world, it also endangers Americans. It also makes people hate us and actually makes people want to act out against us. And this is despite now what are people doing in response to these protests? Well, rather than take a moment of introspection and soul searching and wondering, gee, I wonder what all these people are upset about, what we find is that both on the left and the right, or if you prefer, in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, we see the same sort of fear tactics, that they are trying to scare us into silence and acquiescence. They are trying to scare us to stay home and to not say anything, to let them continue with their slaughter and all of the money that they make off of their slaughter. Now, the form of the scare tactics is a little bit different. The Democrats are threatening us with Trump. They say, well, you have to vote for Harris, even if she she's gonna do anything different from President Biden vis-a-vis Palestine or Gaza. You have to vote for her, otherwise you'll get Trump, and that'll be the end of democracy. And the Republicans are doing the same thing, just a little bit differently. They're saying that if all these people who are protesting, they're all terrorists or they're all foreign agents, and they're using the language of post 9/11. They're using the language of the war on terror to try to intimidate and silence people. And that brings us to that angry conservative that I promised that we would show you. We've got a hit piece that was written, and then this person was invited on the Fox News to talk about these protests. And his big conclusion is that we are all, basically foreign agents. Let's roll the clip and let's see what we got.
That more than 150 extremist groups are either participating in or supporting the DNC protests this week. Ryan Morrow is the investigative researcher who put that report together. He's also an expert on extremist groups and foreign threats. Joins me now to explain his findings. Ryan, break down exactly what your research showed.
Sure. So we looked at every group that we could find that is publicly involved in these protests, and altogether we found over 150, almost 160 of the groups are actually extremist groups. And by extremists, what I mean is they are groups that support Hamas or another foreign terrorist organization, or they support acts of terrorism like the October 7th attacks, or they support a revolution in the United States for the sake of communism or anarchism. So really extreme stuff. And within that group, what we found is that they are tied to or supportive of at least 9 hostile foreign governments that don't like the United States, like Iran, China, Russia, even North Korea. And they also support or are tied to almost 20 different foreign terrorist organizations. So this is an extreme bunch.
So to be clear, what you're saying is some of our major enemies, North Korea, Iran, China,
check this out. Listen to this.
Could be funding, I should say, these groups either directly or indirectly.
They might, they may not even need to.
He knows he can't say that.
This group of loyalists, this really big network that we've really drawn out at Capital Research Center, that they might just be able to operate on their own. I don't even know if they have to get orders, because they're going to act on behalf of these governments and these foreign terrorist organizations anyway. But in fact, within that overall network, there's a few groups that formed a coalition to specifically disrupt and try to shut down the convention. And one of the groups, Samadoun,
where's my pearls? I gotta clutch my pearls.
Is directly tied to an Iran-backed communist terrorist group called the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. I mean, like, the leader of it is also part of the leadership of that terrorist group. So direct terrorist ties there to those that are trying to shut this thing down.
At the end of the day, I do not imagine all, or quite frankly, any of these protesters and the groups that they are aligned with are going to be voting for Donald J. Trump. So what is their ultimate goal in protesting the DNC?
This is a mafia-style shakedown. What they are saying to the Democrats is, well, first of all, they're lying. They're saying, we are a part of your base. We've been your loyal voters. They haven't been. Most of them have hated the Democrats because they're so in the.
Yeah, we can shut it there. So as you see, lots of great stuff. Brilliant, man. I'd like to see his SAT score. Unhinged conspiracy talk from Ryan Morrow, which last name seems to be also an Italian American, with Shatana Farq Bainana, that basically just absolute casting out accusations left and right, which you can do in the United States. Apparently, you can't really do anything, unfortunately, legally, if someone accuses you of being a terrorist or being part of a terrorist group. There's really nothing you can do about that. And now this individual had a write-up that his report is sort of being based off of, where he names myself, he names Omar Suleiman, he names other people. as basically being these big evil people, terrorist sympathizers, the normal sort of post 9/11 war on terror thing. Now, I did some digging. I went down the rabbit hole on this guy, and there's some interesting stuff that I dug up. So, I mean, his whole thing that he works right now for, what's it called? The Capital Research Center, America's investigative think tank. And that's a really nice neutral sounding title for a not very neutral Islamophobic think tank. Now, before the Capital Research Center, this individual, Ryan Morrow, he worked for the Clarion Project. Okay. The Clarion Project is founded by a Canadian Israeli. And as you can imagine, that they do a lot of pro-Zionist stuff, that they do a lot of also anti-Islamic stuff. The Clarion Project has put out books. They were founded in 2006, so right in the heat of the grift, right after 9/11, where the grift is going strong, where all these sorts of fake experts can pop up, and this individual passes himself off as some sort of expert in Islam or Islamic extremism, quote unquote. So the Clarion Project had released books such as Obsession, Radical Islam's War Against the West, and another book called The Third Jihad, Radical Islam's Vision for America, etc. Now, if you dig even deeper, it's really interesting that they, let's say they incorporate or they make sure that they use certain sellouts that claim to be Muslims as part of their organization, so that nobody can, it's like plausible deniability. Nobody can say that they're anti-Muslim or anti-Islamic if they have their one token Muslim guy who is outspokenly pro-Israel and anti-Palestinian, and that's exactly what they do. However, their track record is very, very dirty and very, very filthy. And actually, they're also tied to the Clarion Project and other groups, and this particular individual, Ryan Morrow, is tied to the training of police officers across the country in the same sort of these quote-unquote counter-extremist measures where he spews his anti-Islamic nonsense. The same types of conferences where Israeli intelligence collaborates to militarize our own police forces. And there's articles written about that. If you don't know, then I recommend that you educate yourself. One of these such conferences, I was, surprised to read, there's an article written April 27th, 2016, took place in my old stomping grounds up near Utica in Verona, New York. 800 police officers attended this New York Tactical Offers Association conference. Okay, and there were dozens of workshops where they were trained in Israeli martial arts. SubhanAllah, I wonder why. And on the last day of the conference, Ryan Morrow, this individual, a national security analyst, lectures about terrorism for 6 hours. And you can imagine the sorts of things that he says. So this is all very, very cookie cutter, okay? And this is very, very, some of the people in the comments were asking about, well, people are going to say this and people say that. How do we deal with all the Islamophobia? I mean, I'm a firm believer that we have to deal with it head on. We know that people are going to attempt to portray us as foreign agents. That's a common tactic across the world, and especially the United States government since the 20s, that anybody that they disagreed with, whether it was communists or socialists or in the anti-war movement of the 1960s, right, or in the post 9/11 world, anybody that they sort of disagreed with, the common sort of tactic is to try to find mythical relations between people from the United States citizens, United States people, Muslims especially now, and organizations abroad. Okay, without going into sort of the dubious sort of circumstances and processes by which the United States government decides that certain groups are terrorists and others aren't, right? Like, I find it very, very rich that we talk about where Ryan Morrow talks about some events, right? And we know that, maybe I'll leave that there. Let's just say that the governments that the United States support in a very, very parallel world could very well be considered state sponsors of terror, right? The United States has this designation. It's an official designation, state sponsors of terror. And there's no sensible reason why Israel's not on it. The only reason is because of politics, because the U.S. considers Israel an ally for some stupid reason. So this is what we're looking at. This type of thing, we need to be prepared. We're going to be called foreign agents. They're going to say that we have ties to foreign countries or foreign groups, that we're part of this group, we're part of that group, all of which is nonsense. But it's all intended to silence us. When you see your name on a dossier or being doxxed, or you see your name, or God forbid, you're drugged in front of Congress one day in one of these witch hunts, this is meant to intimidate you and to silence you so that they can keep on making money from their wars and their brutality. And so I personally think that we have to face this head on, that we're not going to get through it unless we get through all of it. Basically, again, changing the foreign policy of the United States, getting money out of politics, doing these sorts of things that's going to take the oxygen away from the entire Islamophobia industry, the entire sort of Zionist industry, and all its related tentacles. Now, the takeaway from this, and this is another ayah I said I would bring up, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran. How do you prepare yourself for hearing these things? Maybe you see yourself. Canary Mission puts out something against you, puts a dossier together about you. Maybe one of these groups, they put together a doxing truck and they put your name and your personal information out there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already told us towards the end of Surah Al-Imran, لَتُبْلَوُنَّ فِي أَمْوَالِكُمْ وَأَنفُسِكُمْ وَلَا تَسْمَعُنَّ مِنَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ وَمِنَ الَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا أَذًى كَثِيرًا وَإِن تَصْبِرُوا وَتَتَّقُوا فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. You're going to, if you're a true believer, you will certainly be tested in your wealth and in yourselves, meaning loss of money, loss of job, being doxxed. Yeah, totally possible. Or even harm to yourself. You might get bopped over the head by somebody with a "We Love Biden" sign, or worse. And you will certainly hear many hurtful words, accusations, harm from those who are given the scripture before you, Christians and Jews, and from many people who worship idols. But if you are patient and mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that is a resolve to aspire to. So hang tight, inshallah, and Allah's aid will come. Let's circle back to the chat. I'm sure we had a lot of comments on this. And then we have an interesting article in the Yaqeen Institute to highlight, and then we'll get into tafsir and our book. Sheamus says, richest of the enemies of Muslims put their money to fight Islam. Richest Muslims give their money to these same people as investments. Allah. Well, I don't see the lie, Sheamus. I don't see the lie, unfortunately. Yaqub Ali, yes, we all have pain. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Ash 2020 from New Hampshire. Beautiful state. Umar Dasher. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. I miss you too, akhi. South Jersey represent. Good to hear from you, bro. It has been a lifetime. Inshallah, I'll make it down to Jersey soon and visit you and your lovely family. May Allah protect you. Nas, all the billions of dollars, and they still can't defeat the resistance. Ooh, yep, 100%. So a lot of times power is about projection, right? We're invincible, we're invincible, we're invincible. You ain't that invincible, right? Actually look at what's happening. Laura says, Reds is a new Palestinian startup rival for TikTok, which started this week. That's good to know, Laura. Thank you very much. I did not know that. Muhad, Adlan, alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah give you bountiful blessings. Ameen, 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 ya Rab. Sheamus dropping ayat. Thank you. Amina. Or Trump's Twitch streaming with Sneeko, of all people. Yeah, I mean, what a world we live in, subhanAllah. Hopefully meaning it's Ansara. Katie Aladdin, or Qadi maybe. Aladdin, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, from Maryland. Nazia Zubairi, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, from Dallas. Inshallah, I'll be in Dallas next month and the following as well. Bread and Zatar, awesome username. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. No worries. Happy that you were there at the DNC protest. And with a username like Bread and Zatar, I would expect you to be at the protest. Excellent. I bet it was crowded. AOC praising Biden was hilarious, but we see what these people are made of. Their true colors always show. Oh, the Democrats are the best at tone shaming. Qadri. Yeah, the Obamas at the top of the chain there. Juju mentions about Trump and ceasefire, etc. Listen, we've seen that Israel doesn't want a ceasefire at all. That they have no interest in a ceasefire. They're literally just gaslighting even the United States, but especially every other group. They've demonstrated absolutely nothing to indicate that they are serious about a ceasefire. Yes, alhamdulillah, Laura, I agree. Anfal is super important. Listen, the times that we're living in, since the last 10 months, Al Imran, Nisa, Ma'idah, Anfal, and At-Tawbah. Read them. Like, subhanAllah. You see, wow. Verses that you've been reading, you've heard of before, but you see them in a different light now. Ameen, all the dua going on. Let's see. Awsat asks why we don't have a strong united Muslim organization, because we're asleep. Awsat. Hubb ad-dunya wa karahiyat al-maut. Because we thought, we believe in America, right? The opening scene from The Godfather. We thought as long as that we would pay money to relief and charity organizations, and we would just be good Americans, and we would be quiet, that people would leave us alone. No, it's not true. Evil doesn't rest. So we have to have a little bit more courage and do more bold action than that. We have to actually challenge those people who are trying to criminalize us and make us unsafe. Yeah, Salahuddin, exactly. Expert on extremist groups. How many experts on extremist groups? I want to see. Would you get your degree in extremist studies? Right? Like, did they fly you to different parts of the Middle East like for 4 years? Did you do like a study abroad in like I don't know, like where did you? How do you get that credential? Like, just anybody can show up and decide and claim themselves as an expert on extremist groups. MashaAllah. It's like, where's that meme of the Always Sunny guy with the board? Yeah, conspiracy. Good point, Sheamus. Extremist is that Republican version of Khariji. It's like the Oprah meme. You're an extremist. You're an extremist. Everybody's an extremist. Walaikum salam, Saeed Farah. Yeah, exactly. Salahuddin says Imam Tom is Italian descent. Mafia links found. There you go. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. You know, a lot of people talking in the chat about gray zone, about people who are being paid by Iran, those sorts of things. And yeah, I mean, hey, look, these people aren't us, right? So this is part of the tactic to lump everyone in. Like the fact that he would lump in like extreme leftists, right, with like communists and anarchists, with Muslims, with like all these different groups, very, very disparate groups, right? It's just what he considers as people he doesn't like. And so they're all of a sudden enemies of America and they're extremists. Yeah, being tied to, with ties to. I want to see. And it was interesting how, this Ryan Morrow guy, he knows that he can't say that we're getting direct money, because then we would be able to say, nope, let's go into the books. Let's hit, that we got receipts. There's nothing there, folks. But he knows that he can't say that. And that's why it was so interesting that the interviewer actually like, so you're saying that like people are getting funded? Like, well, no, they don't even need to be. They're just acting in the same way as North Korea or whatever. Well, North Korea eats Cheerios for breakfast and I eat Cheerios for breakfast. Does that mean I'm taking orders from North Korea or acting in their interests? Like, give me a break, right? But this is how little proof they have and how they're just going off of this sort of, collective suspicion and this sort of witch hunt to try to silence people. Yes, and exactly, A. Qadri, the same accusations against Bisan by Zionists. They try to punish people. They try to punish people and silence people. And they hope to go after people that they think they can win with. They don't touch people that they know they're going to lose. They try to go after people that they think they can win with to intimidate and silence the rest of us. Yeah, I wonder, Sheamus says Krav Maga, pseudo martial art. I wonder which country they stole that martial art from, like the hummus and the grape leaves that are really Palestinian. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, Farha Farouk. Random Thought says, it's essential to intensify our da'wah to the non-Muslims. I agree. Stop making religion a profession. Maybe. We must follow the sunnah of the Prophet, alayhi salatu salam, sure, and the companions who didn't take money for teaching the Quran. That's a fiqh issue, and that's tied to maslahah, right? There are situations in which if paying people and professionalizing a field is going to lead to the success of that field, then it is a good thing. However, your concern is real, but I think that your concern can be decoupled from just monetary compensation. We don't want it to be fakes. We don't want celebrity shake culture and this sort of nonsense, right? But if professionalizing it and compensating properly is going to help it, if it can be done in an autonomous way, where it's not under the control of like the donor class or things like that, then labets. And this is a fiqh discussion that many people have had before us. Ashik brings up a video circulating about Vlad Putin kissing the Quran. Yeah, Putin plays both sides. Believe that. Putin is like the Obama, in the sense that he understands the best way to fight Islam is to control it. That's why he has his Mufti of Dagestan, passing fatwa against niqab and things like that. Raha, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, from Baltimore, Maryland. People asking some very incriminating questions here. I'm going to dodge some of them. Pebbles222 asked about Mehdi Hassan. I'm not going to take this platform to do it, but you can check my interview with Salman Butt on Islam 21C. Check out, here we go. I'll just say this. Check out Rifat al-Arir. Look at what he said about Mehdi Hassan. If you want to see Norman Finkelstein, see what he has said about Mehdi Hassan. Yes, exactly. And Mariam brings up a good point. This is the same tactic Arab countries are using against the Muslim Brotherhood: baseless vilification and exaggerated fear-mongering. That's the tactic that Gulf nations such as the UAE are using in America to try to lobby with Republicans to get the Muslim Brotherhood designated a terrorist organization, which is ridiculous, right? That's why one of the first things that Israel said after October 7th was ISIS equals Hamas, because they're trying to tie Hamas to ISIS and the entire Palestinian resistance to ISIS, and then tying them to the Muslim Brotherhood so that they can basically conflate all of those things as one. If you just even have a basic understanding of the region, understand that those are very, very different groups, okay? And that they, are extremely different in their goals and their tactics and their ideologies and everything like that, right? But the whole thing depends upon painting them all with the same brush in order to criminalize them. AF, I can't give exact prescriptive guidance on the election, but if you think that one of them is less evil than the other, then I don't know what you're looking at. Wissam, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. It seems like the Muslims in the USA want to back Trump if he'll at least talk about a ceasefire. Not my read of the situation, but I feel like we need to move from the two-party system. There's no doubt that the stranglehold of the two-party system on American politics is a limiting factor. I don't see Muslims lining up behind Trump. That's just not my experience. Like, I think that people are very conflicted. A lot of people I know are talking about voting third party. Probably the majority of people I know. I can't tell you what to do. That's not Yaqeen Institute sort of platform. That's not a thing to do in this platform. But just describing to you what I see and from the people I know, most people are talking about third party. Most people are not talking about any of the two main parties. Sam Ahad asks a good question. Why can't we have our own social network? Yeah, we need to. We need it. Long-term plan. Sad to hear, Bella. Good question, Bella. How can we expect support from others when there's so much division in our own community? I'll just qualify that by saying not all division's bad. Okay? Some division has to happen. You don't want to have unity with the hypocrites. Okay? But yeah, that is true. That we need to clean up our own house at the same time as reaching out to others. Good point, Maryam. SubhanAllah, this tactic has been used by disbelievers and mentioned in the Quran. Fir'aun called the Prophet Musa alayhi salam a sorcerer, right? And claimed that he was the teacher of, I love that, the moment when in Surah Al-Shu'ara, when, the magicians accept Islam, and Fir'aun says, Musa's got to be your teacher, right? This crazy conspiracy theory, right? It is a very old tactic. I don't know that I agree with Muhammad Yasser Haji Noor at this point. It's far better to not vote. I don't agree with that. I think that voting, especially if you're not voting for the two parties, like it would register as a protest vote, which is perhaps something, but that's to be debated in another forum. And Mariam, thank you. Walaikum salam from Kuwait. Glad that you're catching us live. Kuwait's a wonderful place with wonderful people. Trying to get to the end of the comments before we turn to our call to action. We've got a really, really excellent article in Yaqeen Institute penned by the indomitable Dr. Oemer Enjum. If we could bring up maybe the asset to that or the link, where Dr. Oemer has written an article. Everybody should read it. If you're tuning in, please read it. Speaking Truth to Power, Islamic Rules for Protests, Civil Disobedience, and Encampments for Gaza. Very, very important piece. I'm just going to read to you real quick the main subheadings. Okay, so one of the subheadings is that all of this, what we do, fits under enjoining good and forbidding evil. That's the frame that we're going with. We're fulfilling a collective obligation to defend Muslims. That's super important. We're also, it's essential that we maintain Islamic etiquette and avoid anything that's haram. Easier said than done, but it's going to require us to get our own house together and build our own sort of spaces. Number 4, building intentional alliances. I wrote more about that on my blog piece. And recognize your right to oppose injustice. This is your divine right. And ultimately, we'll put our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to deliver the results. We're only responsible for the best action that we possibly can. Let's see what we got. Sada asks, haven't the Gulf rulers been funding anti-Islam Muslim laws in Western nations? Yes, they have, especially the UAE. Atik Rahman, buongiorno, alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, sto bene, grazie. Grazie, molto grazie. Grazie mille, as we say. Welcome to the program. Good to have you back, one of our return viewers. You made it to the end. Congratulations, alhamdulillah. Very good. All right, so let's move on. We've got our call to action. Go ahead and read that article. It's a very important piece. And if you haven't already read my article about intersectionality and the Gaza protest, then also read that as well. It's sort of articulating this sort of political philosophy that we need for this time and a guidance for how to act. Now let's transition to tafsir. We've got Surah An-Nas. Last time we did Surah Al-Fatiha, and the unique word was, well, there are several unique words. One of them was Al-Maghdub, and we talked about it. Today, we are going with Surah An-Nas, and we're going to ask you, get ready. What is a word in Surah, don't hold it up yet, guys. Don't put the poll up yet. But what is a word in Surah An-Nas that is unique? Or start thinking about what are the unique words in Surah An-Nas that don't occur in any other surah in the Quran, right? So Surah An-Nas, the final surah in the Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. That's it. It's short, it's sweet, it's to the point. What word in there? We have now the option, guys. Oh, let's go over what it means. Okay. Do we have the translation up, or we don't have that? That's cool. Say قل أعوذ برب الناس. Say I seek refuge in the Lord of the people. Malik Nas, owner or controller or sovereign of the people. Ilahi Nas, the God or the deity of the people. Min sharril waswasil khannas, from the evil of the whispering khannas. And there's a couple different ways we could translate that. The one who retracts, the one who sort of hides away. This sort of imagery. Right? He kind of makes his mischief and he runs away and he goes hiding back in the shadows. Okay. الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس, the one who whispers into the hearts of people, من الجنة والناس, from among the people and among jinn. So let's bring up, guys. We've got in the studio. What do we have? What are the options here? I think we got multiple choice. No, we just have the answers. Okay, we don't have multiple choice. We're good. All right, so give me your answers. What is the word in Arabic that is unique to this surah that doesn't come in any other surah? There's a few, so there are multiple right answers. People going in. Waswas, watermelon, that is correct. Al-Khannas, Ruqiyya, that is correct. Waswisu, Busam, that is correct. Sudur, no. Sudur appears in other ayat. Khannas, Shehu, yep. Whispering with the translation, yes. Waswisu fi, yes. Very good. Excellent. So anybody who said anything to do with whispers or anything to do with khannas, you are correct. Those are the unique words in Surah An-Nas. So we're going to focus in on just one of them, al-khannas. Okay, and al-khannas is a title, something that only occurs in Surah An-Nas. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is naming or giving a laqab, giving a nickname to Shaitan, to Iblis himself. And as we said, that the meaning of this word, sort of indicating one who hides away or slinks away or basically, right, again, causes the mischief and then runs, that this is one of the main points of the surah because it indicates to us the method and mechanism by which the shaitan leads us astray. Okay? There's a couple really interesting connections between this surah and what we're doing in Atomic Habits. We talk about bad habits, and some of the bad habits that we have might be sinful habits. And why do these sinful habits keep on coming to us? Because the shaitan, by whispering, by being someone who basically does it and then leaves, he basically just points out to us. He makes us notice the possibility of committing a sin and notice a justification for why it might not be that big of a deal, right? He shows us the cues, if we want to use the language of Atomic Habits. He's doing a process of naming, okay? And then he whispers to you the justification that it might not be that bad if you do it. You have a reason. Everything has a maslaha, right? There's always a maslaha, a reason to do it. We can always justify. I'm just doing dawah, right? I'm just, I'm doing what everybody else is doing, right? It's not like I'm doing this. That would be way worse. There's always a justification. The shaitan is ready to give you that justification, and then he'll retreat and watch from a distance as everything blows up in your face. Okay? So this is the method that shaitan operates by. And so it becomes really important to link it up with what we're about to talk about in Atomic Habits when it comes to the how to minimize our bad habits and how to disrupt them and how to break them, and admitting that some of our bad habits are also sinful habits. Ashik asks a question. By listening to your recitation, am I ever able to pray salat behind you? Pray that Allah grant this wish of mine. We have to be in each other's sight. If you want to pray behind me, you got to be with me, right? You can't like pray. You can't like play the video at minute 133 or whatever and then like use it in your salat. No, you can't do that. Okay. Very good. Okay, so many people were right on when it came to guessing. Very good. We will continue to do this. So next time, not next week, but the following week, we will talk about Surah Al-Falaq. And there's some interesting, unique words in that as well. Excellent. Well stated, Bella. I appreciate that. Yes, Watermelon also brought up another one, my favorite. I'm not doing Obligation X because other people who do Obligation X are doing bad deed Y. You know? Why should I do? Yeah, subhanAllah. The tricks will always have a reason. Shaitan always gives us an excuse. But with that said, let's transition to our final segment for the night, and that's our personal development segment. We've been going through the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. Very, very useful book for Muslims. Coincides almost one-to-one with some of the things that we have to do in Islam, and it really helps us with trying to get into the maximizing our good habits and minimizing our bad habits. Favorite reciters? I'll get to that. That's a good question. I mean, I'll get to it at the end of this one, okay? This one is all about self-control. The title of the next chapter is The Secret to Self-Control, and he brings up some wild statistics, okay? So he talks about drug addiction. I know some of the people that were watching previous episodes wanted to talk about drug addiction. Well, this is where he gets into it in the chapter on The Secret to Self-Control. He brings up a case study of the Vietnam War and when American soldiers were abroad in Vietnam fighting the unjust war there, that a whopping 35% of U.S. servicemen tried heroin while they were there. That's crazy. And of those people who were there, 20% of the soldiers were addicted to heroin. 20%. That's 1 out of every 5 soldiers in the U.S. military fighting in Vietnam was addicted to heroin. That's mind-blowing. Now, even more mind-blowing that, what percent of them used heroin within 1 year of returning to the United States? That's the open-ended question. What do you think? The answer will surprise you, perhaps shock you. Only 5% of those people who were basically addicted, they were heroin addicts, over in Vietnam, when they came back, only 5% used heroin within the first year of being back. That's nuts. Why is it nuts? It challenges a lot of our assumptions about addiction and addictive behavior and how they work. In our culture, in the United States of America, we definitely tend to see addiction and drug use as a moral failing, and it is a moral failing. Like, let's not be unclear about that. However, what this study showed is that there's a lot more going on than just willpower, okay? It shows you the power of context, the power of environment, and the power of cues. Now, let's flip these sorts of things, okay? Imagine, what are the numbers, do you think, of people who get addicted to heroin in their own homes, right? In their own homeland, where they live, in their residence, okay? What do you think if people go through a program to try to quit heroin? We're going to stick with heroin so that we minimize the variables. What percentage of people who go through these programs relapse within a year? 90%. The numbers are almost flipped entirely. So people who get addicted to heroin in their residences, like where they live, they can go through a program, they go home, 90% of them are using heroin again within a year. The people who are abroad in a totally different environment were addicted to heroin, they come back, change everything about their lives, only 5% used heroin within 1 year. Think about it. That's the point that the author is making when it comes to the secret to self-control. You're jumping the gun, Watermelon. We're talking about, we're going to talk about it. Okay, so what's the point here? The point is that unhealthy behavior, yes, there is a dimension to it that is about self-control. There's a dimension to it about moral weakness. There's a dimension to it that is moral choice. Okay, however, there is another dimension to it that has to do with a disciplined environment. Okay, so he talks about the difference between a disciplined person. We are used to thinking about things in terms of disciplined people, that there are disciplined people and undisciplined people, and disciplined people just have all the willpower in the world, right? And they can just face any temptation and they're successful at resisting that temptation, versus this idea that really successful people create disciplined environments for themselves. They create environments where there is no temptation, or where there's very, very, very little temptation. So they don't have the chance to have a failure of willpower. That's a really, really interesting proposition. That's the proposition of the author. Basically, he says that the people who seem that you and I look at as the most disciplined are the people who spend the least amount of time around temptation and triggers and cues that would lead to negative behaviors. And exactly like like Bread and Zatter said. This reminds me, the first thing that came to mind was the hadith of the 99 men, or the hadith of the person, that killed 99 men. Okay, so he was a person who had murdered 99 people. He went to a monk. He asked, will God forgive me? And the monk said, no way. And so he killed the monk and he made it an even 100. And then he went to a sheikh and he said, I killed 100 guys. I killed 100 people. Can I be forgiven? Will Allah forgive me? He said, yes, but you have to change your location. You got to get out of your situation where you're at and you need to go. And you know the rest of the hadith. He died on the way, but Allah made it so that because of his intention and his effort that he expended, Allah forgave him, even though he didn't even make it to the place where he was at. So this is exactly what the author is talking about, that Islam recognizes that we want to not just build disciplined people, we also want to build disciplined environments. And sometimes the key to building a disciplined person is actually to build a disciplined environment. That the person who is the most successful is the person who spends the least amount of time around temptation, which is also borne out in other sort of ayat and examples in our tradition. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Isra, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا. Don't even come close to illicit sexual intercourse. Don't even get close to it. Because if you get close to it, there's a likelihood that you're going to fall into it. And so you need a tuqah, right? You need this sort of, taqwa literally means sort of like a wiqaya, is like a protective barrier. You need to put enough of a barrier in between yourself and that haram thing that you're not going to get in a tempting situation, right? And then you look like a, like an alpha male or a sigma male, whatever the kids are saying these days. You look like some big boss, like this person with amazing willpower. It's just that you don't have any temptation. You have a situation in which you have no temptation. Other examples, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ talking about doubtful matters, right? The halal is clear and the haram is clear. And in between them are mushtabihat, the things that are doubtful. And then he says that the example of a believer is like somebody who's grazing their flock around the hima. The hima is like the pastures, right? The king's pastures. If you graze your flock on the edge of that pasture, it's just a matter of time before one gets in. And then you're guilty of doing something haram. That somebody who has taqwa, wiqaya, is going to put a barrier in between themselves and the haram. They're not going to be in a tempting situation. They're not going to put themselves into temptation so that they will fail. And this is exactly Ashik talking about your procrastination environment. So you can break a habit. One of his points in one of his quotes is that anybody can break a habit, but it's much harder to forget a habit. That habit lives on in your mind, and this is what the shaitan plays with his whisperings, right? And so the key to stopping bad habits is to make them invisible. Just like the key to good habits is to make them visible and increase visibility, the key to breaking bad habits, and especially sinful habits, is to make them invisible. Reduce your exposure, remove cues, and make sure that you spend the least amount of time in temptation as possible. Now, I'm going to go into the comments and I'm going to hit everybody's questions and comments, but I want you to think about this and state your intention. Our homework for the next 2 weeks, because we're coming back in 2 weeks, is to think about one bad habit that you have that you want to eliminate, and how you are going to structure your environment, how are you going to make it invisible? How are you going to make the cues that trigger that habit invisible so that you are going to break this habit? And if it's very private, obviously you don't have to share, but any sharing will be encouraging to the jama'ah. Let's go to the comments, and then after we do that, we will wrap it up. Somebody asked me about my favorite reciters. I'm definitely partial to the reciters of Medina. So the old heads, like Muhammad Ayyub and Ali Jabir, right? From the young guys, Abu Ayjan and Ahmed Talib Hamid. Those are definitely my favorites. From Mecca, I like Bandar Balila a lot. And from the Egyptians, I'd say Minshawi. Minshawi is probably my favorite from the Egyptian reciters. Oh, can't forget from Bahrain, Anas, what's his name? Al-Umari or something like that. He's special, mashallah. I really, really like to listen to him. All right, what do we got in the comments? Very good. People swapping tips. I appreciate that. It's interesting also to see sort of the different things that we excel at and the different things that we struggle with. Your struggle is somebody else's triumph. Somebody else's triumph is your struggle. Right? This happens. Interesting reflection, Amina. Very interesting about the different change of environments. Sometimes home is too comfortable. Definitely. That's why people go on these retreats, right? And we always say at retreats, you know, you got to go home and you got to stay, you know, you got to keep the changes. But there's some wishful thinking going on there because you really need to change your environment when you get home. Ricardo Arocho, Walaikum salam rahmatullah. Welcome. Bienvenido. What is that? Puerto Rican flag? I'm trying to see what your profile pic is. Let's see. Sam Ahad says, I'm a slave descendant from Guyana, South America, went to England, UK, and now in the USA. MashaAllah. It's interesting how we get around. Yes, Earl, I agree. Recognizing the cues are definitely help within itself. We ask everybody who talks about, who mention their bad habits to may Allah strengthen you and make it easy for you to break your bad habits. Let's see. Atika says that Sheikh Saud Shuraim, OG, is my favorite, mashallah. Definitely, he's one of the big ones. I'm having a hard time, Ashik, understanding what you're saying. I said, can't even complete my 1,000 Sayyid al-Istighfar. Too much coffee, I guess, when I made that. Maybe when you made that intention, I'm guessing you're saying. So I tweak it to 500 in Pomodoro style. I don't know what Pomodoro style is. Pomodoro means tomato in Italian. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Mehmed Kareem asks, what's hypocritical? You got to go back and listen to the rest of the episode. Ryan Christian, Walaikum salam, revert from Houston. Lovely city. May Allah bless you. Not controlling anger, that's definitely a common habit. Amin, watermelon, amin. Boricua, okay. Ricardo, bienvenido. Excellent. Great to have you with us. I'm hoping you know about the 3 Puerto Rican imams and the work that Abu Sumaya does with the Puerto Rican community and the Latino community through Reverse Reconnect and other sort of examples. He's a gem to the Ummah. May Allah guide him and preserve him. Yeah, Juju says, creating distance from my cell phone is my biggest challenge. That's 100% something that the author mentions. Said, leave your cell phone in another room. When you go to work, right, at least like in 2-hour, 3-hour blocks, leave that phone in another room entirely. 100%. Abdullah says, I worked with video game addiction. Oh, interesting. Camps. And those successful had to remove tech from their houses completely. That doesn't surprise me whatsoever. Atif Chauhan, do you recommend ebooks over physical books? Never. For people trying to develop a habit of reading? No way. Jose, read those books, man. Never get that new book smell through a screen. That's what Pomodoro means, Amina. Working for 25 minutes, 5-minute break, repeat. Wow. I had no idea. Well, I benefited from you all. Thank you for that. Yeah, watermelon, I hear you. Working from home, getting outside is very important. Yeah, Abdullah keeps on wanting me to try decaf, and I don't understand the point. Like, what would be the purpose of trying decaf coffee? I would be like, you know, I don't know. Okay, interesting. People informed me about Pomodoro. That was a total new thing. I thought you all learned Italian for a second. We were just going to talk about pasta Pomodoro or, you know, whatever. All right. Good stuff, everybody. Well, I appreciate everybody sharing, especially those who made themselves vulnerable with something that they're going to try to break. Geez, what's a habit that I'm going to try to break? I think I need to definitely be better about phone usage during work hours. So I'm going to just take that as my challenge. For the next 2 weeks, I'm going to leave my phone out of the room in blocks of, let's say, 3 hours. Okay. And I'll report back after that. Yes, Qadi al-Din, as we did in the beginning of the program, definitely dua for Bangladesh, 100%. Ruqya Diriya asks, Salah between Maghrib and Isha, is it considered Qiyam al-Layl? Yes, Layl begins with Maghrib. Sam Ahad says, Mehdi Hassan and I went camping in Wales. I hear Wales is beautiful. Walaikum salam, Hussein Hassan from Buffalo, mashallah. Welcome. Atika asks, what do you eat polenta with? Butter. Butter. You can do olive oil. You can also do a sort of like tomato-based sauce, but mostly in the northern Italian cuisine, it's more like butter heavy, butter and oil heavy than it is like tomato heavy. Ameen, ameen, ya Rab. May Allah preserve everybody that tunes into the program and everybody who watches it thereafter. Barakallahu feekum, wa alaikum salam. We got people coming in the door just as we're about to leave. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in from California. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. We're going to sign off before I have to give any more salams. Thank you, everybody. Until 2 weeks' time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Subhanakallah wa hamdika. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. See you next time. Assalamu alaikum.